Hi, this is Robin. Today's video is going to be part of my Sorta short playlist of quick tips for using Photoshop. And we're going to use this image for my demo. Sometimes when we're out taking photos, we just have to get a quick grab shot, or there's something going on and we have to just shoot quickly and we can't frame the image as well as maybe we would like to. And I'm going to use this image of this leaping dog as an example of that. It's really framed much too tight for this dog. And sometimes, you'll end up with something like right on the top frame, right on top of somebody's head, or, it's going to be too close on one side or the other. And you're like, oh, I wish I could have gotten more space around this. So that's what we're going to focus on in this tip today is how to create some breathing room if you ended up framing your image too tight. So let's get started with this dog, because right now, the way this is framed, his nose is going to bump right into the edge of this frame. It's a little claustrophobic behind his tail. And I'd say because his trajectory here is up and out of the water, he's going to hit his head on the top of the frame. You have to give animals and people space to move into in your photos. You can't just crop it so tight or it just doesn't look right. So what I'm going to do first here to try to correct this framing is I never work on my actual original image. So I'm going to left click and drag this background image down to the bottom of the layers panel. So I'm in the layers panel, left click and drag down to that plus sign inside the box, which is the add new layer. So we're working on a duplicate copy and we don't mess around with the original. Now what we want to do is essentially we want to expand our canvas or our frame. So to do that, we're going to do the counterintuitive thing to a tool that we often use to crop in, and that's the toolbar. So we're going to left click on this little crossing over square, which is the crop tool, and activate it. So you can see it's black behind it, so it's active. And with the crop tool active, we get a frame around our image with some of these heavier white handles. So you know that the crop tool is active. Now, generally, when you think of cropping, you think of pulling the handles in and making an image tighter because you've shot too wide. Well, we can do the inverse too. Since he's too close to his nose here, we're going to grab on this little handle. You'll see there's little two-headed arrows there. And for this particular image, I'm going to pull out and just use your judgment for your image as to how much space. I want to give him enough space to jump into here. So then I'm going to release that left mouse button that I kept depressed while I was pulling that handle out. And what you'll see appear will be transparency. So that's empty space in front of your actual content. And that's fine. That's what it's supposed to do. I also, as I said, for this particular image, want to give him some space above since he's moving up and to the right. So I'm going to, with this solid bar here in the center of the crop frame, I'm going to left click with those double-headed arrows and pull just a little up. I don't want too much because I don't want the focus on the water. I want the focus on him. I just want him to have enough space to maneuver in. And then same thing around the tail on the left side. So whatever you have, you might want to work with your bottom frame too. I'm not going to work with that for this image. And here I'm going to left click on this solid bar and just pull slightly out. I don't need a lot of space, because again, I want the attention over where the dog is heading, but I just don't want him to look like he's chopped off at the back. So once we get these transparencies wherever it is you're expanding your frame, then you can either click on this check mark at the top of along the options bar, or you can hit your enter or return. I'm going to just left click here to commit to those changes. Okay, so now we have an expanded canvas with transparency around our original image. Now, those expanded transparency areas are essentially the shape of a rectangle. So what I'm going to do next is go to my toolbar for my custom setup. It's right here on the right. Yours might be on the left. And I'm going to select this rectangular marquee tool and left click on it. Now, if you don't see that tool, look at the little arrow that's to the right there and right click on that to expand. And if for some reason you have your elliptical marquee showing, then go to the rectangular and left click on that to make that the active tool. Okay, so now with that rectangular tool active, I'm going to come back over to my image. I'm going to left click just inside where there's content. So I don't want to be clicking in the empty area. There's no content there. I want to get into an area where Photoshop will have something to use as reference to fill the empty area. So I'm going to left click, and then I'm going to keep that left mouse button depressed. I'm going to drag all the way down to the bottom of my image and pull all the way over and a little beyond, just to be sure we get there, to create a rectangle in that empty transparency area with a hint of it over into the actual content of your image. Now, position your cursor inside that empty area, and these marching ants in Photoshop, those dashed moving lines are called marching ants. Right click in there, you'll get this pop-out menu. Come down to where it says Content Aware Fill, and you get that highlighted. Left click on that. Okay, and we get taken into the Content Aware interface. I'm going to drag my image over so we can see what we've got here. Okay, we have the original images positioned here. We have a preview area here, and different settings and controls are over here. Right now, I have an overlay color set to this magenta E color. You can set it to whatever you want just by left clicking there. I've described how to work with this a little bit more in another one of my videos on removing distractions in Photoshop. So if you want more understanding of how to work with content aware fill, you probably want to check that out. Okay, so now what we are seeing here is wherever the pink is in my original image is what is going to be used by Photoshop to create content for this empty area. It's essentially the reference content. So using this circular brush that I have, you can see it right here where I'm moving it around. If you look in the center of it, there's a minus sign. And so what I can do is, first of all, I can use my left bracket key and maybe make this a little bit smaller so we don't grab too much. And I don't want the nose, the snout, or any of the dog to be used to fill this area. I just want water. So I'm going to paint over any parts of the dog that Photoshop might be using as a reference to fill in that water and minus it away. Okay, so now if we look into the preview area, you can see Photoshop has used the highlighted content to essentially fake expanding your frame where you didn't get your shot just where you wanted it. So that looks pretty good to me, and at least I'm getting you the principles of what to look for your own image. I like that. I'm going to accept it. I'm going to go to the bottom of the Content Aware Settings panel and click left click OK. It's going to add a new, at least I have mine set up to add a new layer. I like to do that versus overwriting the current layer in case something doesn't work out right. Okay, so we see the original image. This looks good to me. We're going to click on Control or Command D to get rid of those marching ants. And then now we're going to repeat the process for the top empty area. Gee, my mouth isn't working here. So with our rectangular marquee tool, I'm going to click and drag from just inside the content area of my image. So again, don't click just inside the empty area. There will be no reference for Photoshop to use. And then release when we get that rectangle formed. Right click with your mouse inside those marching ants. Come down on the pop-out menu to where it says Content Aware Fill. Highlight it. Left click. We get taken into the Content Aware Fill interface. I'm going to, with that minus sign active in that brush, paint away. I can see in the preview area that it looks pretty much okay, but just get into like a muscle memory thing to do it. I tend to like to paint away anything I don't want to be used for reference or the content, what will be used for content aware fill. I don't want any of this fluffy stuff appearing somewhere that I have to scan for later. So right now, I think it's looking pretty good when I look in the preview area as to what Let me just brush this away in case that's on the dog. Okay. This is the reference area that Photoshop is using for content to fill the empty area. In the preview area, I can see it's done pretty well here with grabbing the water, which is what I wanted. So I'm going to click left click OK to accept that. Again, a new layer has been added that represents this top layer of water. Now that we've got what we want, I can get rid of these marching ants by doing a Control D or a Command D if you're in a Mac. One more for my image. Yours, you might need to do fewer or more. We're going to get that rectangular marquee tool again, which is still active. Going to left click and keep it depressed inside the content area of this image. Drag it all the way down to the bottom. For mine, yours might be a smaller area where you're doing it. So, but for mine, it happens to have to go all the way down to the bottom. So only go as far as you have to if you don't need to go the full area, okay? And so now we've got that full rectangular area. We're gonna right click inside the marching ants, left click on content aware fill, going to scan to see where we're doing that. And my pink area is the reference area for what should fill in this empty area over here. So I'm gonna brush away anything relating to the dog. I don't want a lot of this dark area, but I do want some of this content here. So to change from that minus sign inside this brush to a plus, you would press and hold Alt or Option. See, it's changed to a plus. And I'm going to add a little bit more of this content here. And I'm looking at my preview area to see what we've got. And that is looking pretty good to me. So I am going to click OK. And we've got this grayish area carried over here. We've got this yellowish area covered over here. We've got the reflection from the dog, both the body and the tail carried over. So I feel pretty good about that. So I'm going to do a Control or Command D. And now we have, by doing an expanded crop and then using various tools like the rectangular marquee tool to fill in the transparent areas that were formed by doing that expanded crop, we've gotten a much better framing for this dog, at least I think so. And if you need to do any patching after this is done, you can always do some touch-ups with your blending tools here, the spot healing brush, or you can grab your patch tool, which is this jaggedy patch looking thing, and see. Now if we've ended up with two pieces that look a little bit too much alike, so they look like something might have been faked, with your patch tool active, you can grab just that area. You'll just draw a little circle around that area and pull it to another part of your image to sample. And same thing here. I think this looks a little too matchy, so I'm just drawing around that piece, pulling it over, and there we go. I think this is a little distracting to me, so I just circle around it with the patch tool, pull it over to where I want the sample area to be, and there we go. So that's how you can use your crop tool and expand for more breathing room about any images that you possibly shot too tight and framed too tight. Have fun. Take care. Bye-bye.